Hey, can everybody hear me? Sorry, a little technologically inept right now. So I'll start over. I see there's some more folks that are just joining in now. So again, I'm Dominic Kozak. I'm the farm director for building bridges across the river. Sorry, you can't really see my face very well. The lighting's a little poor right now. But we're here at Allen Chapel Food Pantry at the Garden of Eden. Building bridges across the river farms is actually, so some folks have heard of the Arc Farm, but BBAR Farms is a network of urban gardens and farms throughout wards 6, 7, and 8 that are managed by the community, faith-based communities, and also community centers, making up this sort of network of urban farms and gardens. So we're here at one of our partner sites where we have a collection of beehives. Actually 5 hives in total right now, where we do honey production and also do classes like this where we teach folks the very basics of beginner beekeeping. So I'm happy to have everybody with us this morning. Again, apologies for the lighting right now. It'll be a little bit better as we get closer to the hive. But this morning, I just wanted to go over with folks the very basics of beekeeping and sort of explore the exciting and really fascinating world of bees. We've started beekeeping we've been beekeeping for the past 2 years at our collection of gardens and farms. And now we have in total 7 hives from the Arc Farm to here at Allen Chapel and also over at National Children's Center, which is one of the largest collections of beehives east of the river. So we're really proud of the large apiary that we have and are able to maintain. And through our programming, we've really encouraged our partners and our gardeners to get involved with the beekeeping classes. So the DC Beekeepers Alliance hosts classes every year for beginner beekeepers to teach them the basics. And so we've had a lot of our gardeners, including our farm manager, JJ, who you'll see in just a second, be a part of these classes and really learn the importance of keeping bees and producing honey and having pollinators in the local community. It's really, really important for us and we're really proud of having such a large collection of beehives east of the river, simply because there just aren't that many beekeepers in wards 7 and 8. You know, if you go up to the west side of the river, you'll see a lot of hives in people's backyards, small apiaries behind restaurants. And, you know, there's more of a culture and an acceptance around beekeeping. And this side of the river that hasn't caught on quite yet. And so we're really, really in the process of trying to introduce people and show people how important it is to beekeep, how fulfilling and satisfying it can be to keep bees and harvest honey, and also how profitable it can be once you get into a couple years of beekeeping to actually be able to harvest honey, to harvest propolis, to harvest beeswax, and actually have value-added products that you can sell. So that's just a really quick overview. Normally we do these classes in person, so I'd give you guys a quick garden tour, but we're not able to do that today. Allen Chapel Food Pantry right now is in full bloom. All of their summer vegetables are looking awesome right now. The flowers are looking awesome right now. And the bees have a lot of pollinators, a lot of places that they can go get nectar and pollen from. So we're really, really happy about how things are looking over here. So yeah, I just wanted to start folks off, I think, with an introduction to what we're working on today, and some of the tools and materials that you're going to see and terminology that you're going to be seeing today. And so I'm going to turn the camera around to show you all the table here. And we'll just start walking through some of the very, very basic things. Oh, you can see me a little bit better. That we're going to be using today during our beekeeping exploration. So we'll start with the very basics. This is a smoker. You're going to be seeing a lot of this today. The smoker is used to calm the bees. So bees, as you know, the kind of hive mind, if one bee feels threatened, immediately all the bees feel threatened. And it makes it much, much more difficult to beekeep successfully if all of your bees are actively trying to attack you while you're going into the hive and doing your inspection. And so the smoker is a really, really key tool to use to be able to calm the bees down. It sort of masks any scent. So they give off pheromones that alert other bees to any danger, and the smoker allows you to mask those pheromones, and so the bees remain calm while you're beekeeping in the hive. So that's a really, really important part. And just a quick pro tip: I have an eggshell carton here. Eggshell cartons, they burn. They give off a lot of smoke, and it's it's not super noxious. You want to be really, really careful what type of things you're putting in your smoker and burning. So you never want to put like glossy magazine paper. Obviously, you never want to put any plastics, anything that's going to give off any like noxious off gassing that could harm your bees. You want to really, really be careful not to use any of that. And so egg cartons are really awesome because they're recycled. They burn as clean as things can burn. I mean, you're giving off carbon is not ever what you want to do, but this is as good as you can get. And they burn super, super slow, and they give off a lot of smoke. So this is just a pro tip. I got a bunch of crushed up egg cartons in here, and this is exactly what we use anytime we're going into the hive with the smoker. The next thing I want to show y'all, this is a really, really crucial tool too. It's kind of goofy looking, but this is called the hive tool. So the first immediate thing you'll notice as you start beekeeping is that the bees, the wax and the propolis they make is incredibly binding. So it's super, super difficult to pull frames apart. And I'll show you frames here in a second. Actually take the bee boxes off and on, which I'm going to show you in a second. And so this hive tool, it sort of has this beveled edge, if you can kind of see, that allows you to kind of dig in between boxes and lift up boxes really easily. And also this J hook at the end, which during the demonstration of the keeping, I'll show you exactly how this works. This J hook's able to slot right in into the frames and yank frames out. So again, smoker, hive tool, these are really, really, really important and quintessential parts of beekeeping. So we're going to move on to the hive body. So here, this is what's called a hive body here. This is what you see outside in people's backyards. This is where the bees live. There's different types in terms of height and width of hive bodies, depending on where you're going to be having them inside of the hive. So this one that you're looking at here, this is called a honey super. This is actually where the bees will be storing nectar, capping it over and turning that into honey. And then we have other ones, which I'll show you in a little bit, that are a little bit deeper. And they literally are called deeps or brood boxes. That's where the queen lives, where she lays her eggs, where the young brood and larvae live and hang out. And that's where that's one really, really important place to check on a regular basis to make sure that your queen is active and that your queen is laying. And as we're actually doing the inspection, once we start walking through the hives, I'll show you all exactly what that means in terms of having an active queen and what are the signs of having an active queen. So just pulling some out, here's a frame. Okay, so this is what the bees build their honeycomb and their comb in general on. It has this black foundation on it. We like to use these black ones because it's really, really easy to see eggs and see larvae against this black backdrop. But essentially, this is what you would start with as you're beginning your beekeeping. There's other even more affordable varieties of these frames where it's just wire down between and the bees set the entire foundation themselves. But I've found that this is really, really helpful, especially for young hives, because you don't have to, because they already have this established foundation that they can start building their honeycomb out from. And so it makes it a little bit easier for them. They have to exert a little less energy building their comb out. And also they can focus more on honey production once the nectar flow starts. And that's exactly what you want. So again, we have the hive bodies, and these are what go inside the hive bodies. These are the actual frames. And again, this is a medium frame. This is a honey super frame. And this sort of frame is what we're going to be extracting today and pulling honey off of. And so you'll get to see the different sizes and types of frames and the different parts of the hive body as we go into the hive. This is a feeder. So it has these two holes in the top. This slots right into the hive body. And this is where you can add sugar water. In the beginning of each season, we like to feed the bees. Make sure before the flowers are coming and the nectar flow started, we really like to make sure that they have enough to eat. And so we'll add sugar water. It's really a sugar syrup, and it's like 1 part water to 1 part sugar. So it's like this incredibly sticky, syrupy substance that will feed to the bees in the beginning of the year, and then also during what's called the dearth. And that is the time of year, and we're coming up on that now, sort of after that big spring blossom and all the flowers are sort of dying back and the summer heat's taking over, the nectar flow really slows down. And so you want to make sure you can feed your bees during that time. And so one thing that we're doing right now at all of our hives across Ward 7 and 8 is adding sugar water and feeding them. And so we won't be doing that today, actually, but I thought it was really important to show you what the feeder looks like. And this goes in the brood box. So this would go in one of the deep boxes where the queen is laying eggs and where the young bees live. So I'll just turn it to myself really quick. This is just the basic beekeeping suit. I've seen YouTubers who are beekeepers who don't use any suit and don't use any veil. I'm not that bold yet. I definitely do not want to get stung. It is not super pleasant. And so these beekeeping suits really disable the bee's stingers from being able to get to you. It's like this kind of tough canvas material. One thing I will definitely say is do not skimp on your beekeeping suit. On Amazon and stuff, you can find these super cheap suits for $10, $12. And while that might seem attractive price wise, I cannot emphasize enough that there's really no reason to skimp on your beekeeping suit. So go with something that's a little more heavy duty. You will be thankful later on as the bees are agitated and trying to sting you and their stingers can't get through your canvas. This one also comes with an attached veil. Again, some beekeepers don't use veils at all. I am definitely not there. I don't recommend for any of you all to skimp out on the veil. This one is attached to the actual suit, and it zips up right around the neck area. It also has a flap here. Bees are really ingenious when they get angry and they'll try to climb and creak through any crevice in your clothing, in your pants, down by your shoes to get to your skin. And one area that they typically can get in is around the neck area where the veil connects to the actual suit. And so having this Velcro strap here, once you zip down, you can Velcro yourself down. It's just another added layer of protection that's really helpful for not enabling yourself to get stung. So I'm going to just turn the camera so you can see. I had mentioned him earlier, but this is JJ Boone. JJ, yeah, the lighting's a little terrible. JJ is our master beekeeper for BBAR Farms. JJ, for the past 2 years, has been through the DC Beekeeping Alliance course. And now JJ leads all of our beekeeping efforts, the hives at the Ark Farm, and he also comes to the sites and checks on the hives. And yeah, he's going to be doing a lot of the talking today after we get past the intro in terms of what we're looking at as we walk through the hive. And I'll be asking him questions and prompts and things like that. So Jay, I'm just kind of walking them through right now some of the basic equipment. And so lastly, one thing I wanted to show you all before we start diving into the hives, sorry for the shaky cam. This is the honey extractor. It's kind of goofy looking, this metal cylinder, but essentially what you do when the time comes is you take the frames that are going to be full of honey and you drop these frames with the honey and the beeswax on it into the extractor. Sorry, I hope y'all can see this. I'm trying to keep it as steady as I can. You close the lid and then you actually just spin this thing. You can put in up to 3 frames at a time. You spin this and the centrifugal force of the extractor actually pulls off all of the beeswax and the honey can kind of fall to the bottom of the extractor. And then there's a little nozzle down here at the bottom that you just pull up and then honey will flow out. And so we're hoping today to get a nice honey harvest, and y'all can see this actual process in real life. So that's the sort of basic tools that we're going to be using today. Again, the smoker, really important. Your hive tool, knowing your frames and what size frames you'll need. Having the hive body and knowing exactly where that needs to go. There's a couple other things I'll show you quickly. This brush, you want to be really delicate with the bees, especially during honey harvest. And as you pull out the frames and they're covered in bees, these brushes have these like kind of silk bristles. They're really, really nice for just like gently swiping the bees off. So we use these as we're like extracting honey. So we're not agitating the bees too much. We don't have to shake them or rustle them and get them angry. We can just like gently brush them off the frames back into the hive. So JJ is about set up here. And so I'm going to turn the camera around. You're going to hear a lot less of me and see my sweaty face. And we're going to turn it over to JJ as we walk through the hives. So we're going to go through theirs first. So we're just lighting the smoker now. This thing is so broken. And if you guys have any questions or comments or things, please, we can see all the comments along the side and I'll do my best to respond. So we want to make this as interactive as possible. So totally feel free to make any comments or questions or concerns or anything like that as we're walking through. Cool. I got an extra suit if you want to come in. Yeah. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. This is JJ, and
I gotta speak up.
this is JJ, and we're about to go in the hives. One of the first notes to take is you always, because you don't want to. You don't want to. Oh. Can you pass me the smoker? So this is the first box. Their box doesn't. Cool. Sorry, I had to go get the smoker. Do you want to spray the smoke to calm them down? And this first box is empty.
I'm gonna show.
This will be the box that we use to feed them. So it's just an empty box. As you can see, the box is just empty. Pretty active, this food.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm gonna remove the inner cover.
And Jay, what's the inner cover kind of used for?
Just to
like provide a little bit of separation between the hive body and the cover.
Exactly.
Yeah. And as you all can see, as soon as you pop that top open, the bees are immediately active, and they're all sort of thinking like, what is going on? Why is somebody coming into our home? And so that's, again, what's helpful having a smoker, because you can kind of calm them down a little bit and confuse them a little bit, so they'll just keep on working.
And the reason for smoking them is to basically simulate a forest fire.
Will you say a little bit more? Simulating a forest fire. Yeah, I didn't know that.
So basically, usually honeybees, they go and they usually go make hives in like hollow trees, like in forests. So usually, if something catches fire in the forest, it's calming. It will calm them down. Oh,
that was honey ready.
Yep.
So this is a really awesome frame, y'all. This is a frame is fully ready to be harvested. So I don't know how well y'all can see, but the honey is all capped. So the bees bring in nectar first. It's a really, really interesting process. They collect nectar and put it into this kind of like nectar stomach that they have. It's sort of a different stomach from where they put other food. And when they come into the hive, they regurgitate that nectar into the cells. And then later on, that other bees come around, some of the younger bees, and cap that over with a thin layer of beeswax. Honey is just fermented nectar. And so the process takes, I think, 20 days or something like that.
Yep.
For the nectar to ferment inside of the capped cells and turn into honey. So that's a really, really awesome frame that we'll be using later on in the honey extractor to actually get honey off of. So that's really exciting to see. So we'll definitely be seeing a honey harvest, y'all.
So we definitely see honey.
And Kevin, yeah, so Jay and I have been beekeeping, or have been urban farming together for the past 5 years at the Ark Farm. And with the help of Kate Lee and a couple other folks that were working at DC Greens, we got exposed to beekeeping a few years back. And, you know, it's a really, really important part of growing too. Like, as you all know, without bees, there's really no way to like get food. I mean, having pollinators is one of the most crucial parts of having fruiting plants be able to turn their flowers into actual fruit, have them be pollinated. And so that sort of knowledge got us really, really curious about like, hey, we should try beekeeping ourselves. And we had a few hives at the Ark Farm back in 2015. But, you know, we just weren't as invested. It's a real investment to make sure that the bees stay healthy and happy. And we just weren't invested enough in the process. And so 2 years ago, both Jay and I decided like, hey, we're going to really commit. Wow, this is another awesome frame. I hope you all can see this frame is, just perfectly ready for a honey harvest. All the nectar has been capped and turned into honey. We're going to get a lot of honey. Where at? Right there? No, I think that's brood. I think that's a drone. I mean, so I don't know how well y'all can see. And again, sorry for the video quality, but you can see the bees are super, super active right now. Those, just quickly about the anatomy of a beehive. All worker bees are female. So any bee that you see out collecting pollen, collecting nectar, like really doing any of the work, those are all the female bees. And obviously the queen being the one who is producing or who is giving birth to all the worker bees. The male bees in the hive, they're much fatter and they're known as drones. And interestingly enough, the male bees don't really do anything most of the time. They just hang out in the hive and eat honey and eat pollen and just sort of hang out. They don't even guard the hive. The female bees do all the guarding of the hive also, all the creation of propolis, all the creation of beeswax, the building out of the foundation. What the male bees, literally their sole purpose is just to fertilize other queens. And so at certain points throughout the year, as the queen is infertile, she'll make her flight. I think that's twice a year. She'll make her flight, and during that time, other drone bees from other beehives will also fly out, find queens, and essentially fertilize those queens. And that's literally the sole purpose of the male bees. They don't do anything else. So just to give you a little context, I think there's some lesson there, but I'm we can get into that later. So anyways, as I mentioned, JJ's using the J hook on the hive tool to actually pull out the frames. It's really, really hard. I mean, it's a little difficult to see on video, but it's a muscle job getting these frames out. The propolis and the beeswax that the bees create is incredibly adhesive. And so, it's not easy at all just yanking these frames out. And wow, so I'm really, really glad to see this, everybody. Again, this is another just perfectly ready frame. They've put nectar in the frame, and now they've capped it over. As you can see, all the bees who are, swarming all throughout the frame, making sure that there's nectar on it, making sure that the nectar gets capped over so that it can ferment and turn into honey. So again, this is another awesome, awesome frame. We're going to have a really interesting honey harvest today. So that's really exciting to see.
So we know we have honey.
Yep, we know we have honey now. And again, as I step back, so you can see the entire hive body at the bottom. If you could point to the bottom, the brood box. So the brood box at the bottom, it's wider and it's deeper in terms of so the other ones up top, I think, are like 9 inches deep. That bottom one is 12 or 13 inches deep. That bottom one, that's where the queen lives. That's where all the young larvae, the young bees live, and that's where the eggs and the larvae are. And so as the queen goes around, the queen will lay, I think it's 2,000 eggs a day, up to 2,000 eggs a day. And she'll literally just go around and drop the eggs into different cells. The bees will follow behind her and close the cells and add food into the cells, so that once the eggs emerge and turn into larvae, they immediately have something to eat, and they can be safe and covered until they're ready to emerge. And that whole process from egg to pupa to larva to actual bee, I believe, takes 26 days. So it's not a long process from when the queen lays to when the young bee emerges. Then after that, I believe there's a little less than 6 week period. The bees first are in the hive for 20 some days. And then there's another 40 or so days so as the young bees, they stay in the hive, and as I mentioned, they work entirely. Ooh, this is another good one. They work entirely on cleaning the hive, on capping brood, on capping nectar, on making propolis. After that 20 days, those bees then will go on to actually be the bees that are foragers. So here at the bottom of the hive, if you can see the bees that are coming in and out, those bees are all foragers. And again, I wish folks could be here to see, but you're actually able to see the pollen sacs that are on some of the bees' feet. And so after the young bees mature to about 20 days, they begin taking flight, foraging for pollen and nectar. Then after that period, the bee dies. So it's kind of a short and work-intensive life of a bee. But the colonies can have 300,000-400,000 bees inside. So there's a lot of hands. Many hands make light work. So okay, so back up to the top here, the bee inspection. So we've gotten past the frames that the hive body, that has all the honey in it. And so now what we're going to be looking for primarily is signs that the queen is still laying, that we still have an active queen. And judging by how active this hive seems, I would guess yes. But one of the most important parts of beekeeping is identifying and making sure that you always have a healthy and fertile queen. Again, like I mentioned, the entire life of the hive, longevity of the hive, the health of the hive, it's entirely dependent on the queen. And so making sure that queen is constantly laying is super important. And we'll talk about if you have a hive that it looks like, oh, the queen isn't laying, or is maybe has died and isn't there at all, there's some things that you can do to either introduce the new queen or to feed the current queen, to try to help her out a little bit. So there's some tips that you can do, but I mean, JJ and I are always talking about like, oh, how's our queen doing? How's our queen doing? Because that is the most important part of the hive.
How do you determine which one will be the queen if the queen dies?
So that's a great question. And everybody, this is Samaria. Samaria is our program associate. Stand in the cut a little bit. This is really good.
Yes, this
is a really good. So I hope folks can see this. Maybe we can do it in the light a little bit more. I'm sorry that.
I think it's pretty good. So this is an example of larvae, capped brood, and honey. So this is like one of like a perfect perfect example of how a frame is supposed to look. So as you can see, there's honey around the edges.
This is the capped honey again, around the edges. So nectar inside that's been covered over with beeswax and has set time to ferment and turn into honey.
And we also see capped brood.
So this here is capped brood. So once the queen lays her eggs and the larvae starts to grow into pupa, the bees will come around and cap it over with that's like a mixture of pollen and a few other things that they'll sort of cap it over so that the bee can live inside there, the young bee.
And we also see larvae. You can.
So if you can look along the sides here, and again, I don't know how well you can see, but these sort of white, like literally larvae that are along the side here, these are the egg has went into the larva stage, so waiting to be capped over now. But this is a really, really great frame that shows a healthy hive. They have this food source on both sides for the bees, nectar here that's going to be capped over to be eaten here soon. And then right dead center in the middle, you have actual new bees being born. So the queen was just around here maybe 10 days ago and laid eggs here, because it takes about 10 to 11 days for the eggs to turn into this size of larva. So this is a really, seeing something like this is really, really encouraging, because it all but tells you that there's an active queen inside your hive. The number one way to know is seeing new eggs. So we're going to keep searching for the actual small eggs. But again, this is a really, really great sign.
So as you see the capped brood, there's two different types of capped brood right here shown. So there's the flat one, and as you can see, those two right there, they're like bulging out. The ones that are bulging out are the drone brood, and the flat ones is the worker brood. So that's how you can tell which gender of bees is about to emerge.
Yeah, and that's, again, I'm glad you said that, Jay. It's another really good way to tell the health of your hive. You really don't want too many drone cells being born. There's not any need for too many male bees, excuse me. So if you're seeing a hive or you're pulling out frames and it's full of these kind of bulging out drone brood, that's another sign that potentially the queen either isn't laying or something is kind of going on funky with the hive. Not to get too much into the science and nerd out on bees, but while the queen is the only one fertile that can lay other female bees, if in times of emergency, other female bees can lay eggs, but their eggs will always be drone brood. They'll always be male bees. And so if you're seeing a whole bunch of male bees or drone brood, that's a sign that, like, hey, maybe the queen has died or the queen has left or the queen isn't laying anymore. And so to make up for it, the other bees are trying to lay eggs, and they're only able to make male bees. And so if you see a lot of drone brood, essentially that kind of yellow brood that's poking out, That's another sign that something's going on. I'm just going to check the comments quickly. Not a need for too many men.
I don't know if you guys notice this black thing in here. So that's a beetle blaster. So beehives have pests, and one of their pests is called a hive beetle. So this contraption right here, it actually traps the hive beetles inside, and that way, once they get trapped in there, you just take it out and replace it and add another.
Awesome. You want to check a different hive? Or you want to keep going down this one?
Yeah, we can just go there.
Okay, so we're going to go down one more box. So again, looking at hive bodies backing up, you can really see from the side the different depths of the hive bodies. So we just checked through the top 2 hives, which are mediums or honey supers. That's where the honey is being deposited. Bees will naturally migrate up. So you start with just one box, and as I step back and you can look at the entire apiary, you'll sort of see most of like the 2 boxes to the left and the right of the hive we're working on. Those 2 just have the one deep box, so it's just one brood box. Today we'll be adding some mediums on top, but those are younger hives that we just got, and so we're giving them the queen some time to lay eggs, and the young bees to get established. And then as we add more hive boxes on top, it'll trigger the bees to immediately move upwards and sort of start working in honey production. And so, you know, it's all about timing when it comes to bees, and understanding the life cycle of bees, and knowing when and what hive body to put on is a really important part of that. So yeah, JJ's really having a muscle with the hive tools. You can see the propolis that the bees add to sort of glue the hive bodies together is super, super strong. And so trying to just yank it up without using a hive tool is you know, dang near impossible. All right, so now we're down to the brood box or the brood chamber or the deep box. You know, you talk to 5 beekeepers and you'll get 5 different words for what things are called, and 5 different ways to beekeep. So if there's any beekeepers watching this, I apologize if the terms we're using aren't the ones that you use. Here's JJ smoking the bees quickly to calm them down. They actually will start, as you see, they start diving down deeper into the hive a little bit. It makes it a little bit easier for us then to put in the hive tool and yank out some of the frames. So this is where, once you get down to your deep box, this is where you're really, really looking for queen activity. You know, we saw some in that second box, which is really, really helpful. But diving into the brood chamber, this is where we're going to want to see some eggs, some larvae, or at least some signs that there recently were hatched bees going on, or hatched bees that just emerged. Also, I mean, again, I wish folks could be here to actually look more closely and not through my sketchy webcam lens. But you can really see the different sizes of the bees when you look closely in the brood chamber. There's, again, the really, really fat ones, which are the male bees. And then there's the 2 different sizes of bees. You'll see the younger ones are really, really tiny. And then the sort of medium-sized ones, those are the female bees that are at maturity. And so what we're looking for now is signs of the queen. And ideally, we'll be able to see the queen. But queens are very elusive. And the bees also sort of huddle around the queen to protect her. And so if you don't see the queen during your inspection, that's okay, as long as you're seeing signs of an active queen. So this frame, and what I like to do is just touch the bees to kind of move them away, or you can blow on them. This is an absolutely amazing frame. This frame is entirely covered top to bottom in brood. So again, this is a really great example where you can see what the brood looks like. Sorry, bees, sorry. The capped brood looks like. Again, it's sort of this dark brown color. These ones are all flat. Jay, if you kind of hold it up. These ones are all flat. So you know that's all female bees. So we absolutely have an active queen in here that's laying, there's no way you'd see two different chambers full of brood that's going to be worker bees if you didn't have a healthy laying queen in here. So this is a really, really healthy hive, and that's really happy seeing both sides. As you can see, are covered in worker brood, and you can also blow on them. Are covered in worker brood. So that's really, really encouraging to see. And I hope y'all can kind of see the details here. But it's that kind of flat looking, yellowish, brownish color. Those are all soon. It's larvae that's been covered over, and soon the young bees are going to emerge. So this hive is really going to explode here soon. And so it's important that we did this inspection today so that we can come back and put some more boxes on top, because this hive is definitely going to be exploding here very soon. And as you can see, the bees are a little agitated, but they're still doing their thing. They're just kind of working, going about their business. This is, again, another good sign that you have an active and healthy queen, is a hive that's sort of just continually working. If we do crack one of these boxes open and the bees seem immediately super agitated and kind of listless, that's a sign that, hey, maybe the queen isn't actively laying anymore because the colony's kind of freaking out a little bit. This colony clearly is not. They've got enough work to do that they're not upset that two guys and a webcam are all in their house right now.
You're pretty good.
One of the bees is attacking Samaria.
Just walk all the way away.
Yeah.
Hey, just walk all the way away.
If it's still around you, yeah. Cool. So we'll check one more frame here to see if we can find the queen. But I'm confident that this hive has an active laying queen in it, so it's not too much to be concerned about right now.
So just and always make note, please note, every time you give your hive an inspection, you do not have to see the queen.
Yes.
Your main objective is to make sure to see that the queen is laying. So if you're seeing capped brood and larvae, and capped honey and things like that, then the queen is laying. So there's no reason for you to try to find her and put your finger on her, because it's very possible that you can either kill the queen, and you can kill the queen from you trying to look for her and just wanting to see her. So just always notice you don't have to see the queen. As long as you see brood, then your queen is all right.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. That's a really good point, Jay. You don't want to mess with the bees too much.
Yeah.
Yes, you need to do regular inspections. Yes, you need to be judicious about making sure that the queen is laying, but you don't actually have to see the queen, and you definitely shouldn't go out of your way to try to find the queen and do a whole lot if it seems like you're already seeing all these signs that, hey, we've got an active and awesome queen. So just throwing that out there. I'm going to try to respond to some of the comments. So Kevin, you had mentioned how we got into it. Yeah. Just like the process of being gardeners, and as folks get more into gardening and wanting to scale up production a little bit, I think having a beehive at your garden site is you'll notice, especially if you're doing fruit trees or any fruiting vegetables, tomatoes, eggplant, anything that squash definitely that needs pollination between male and female flowers. Having bees to do that pollination, you're going to see a real explosion of your hive. And how many jars can you get out of one frame? I mean, we'll see. I think last year when we did 9 frames of honey, we got 40 pounds, or not, we did 9 frames, we got 40 pounds of honey. I know there's folks that say from one single hive you can get 90 pounds of honey at a time. And these boxes are heavy. I mean, again, it'd be so much more helpful if folks were here to actually feel it. But you know, we'll see, Kevin. I don't know off the top of my head how many jars we're gonna get from one frame, but it's certainly gonna be 3 to 4 full jars of honey. And I brought today these 6-ounce jars that we're gonna fill up. So that's about what you get in the grocery store, except this stuff is raw organic, and so you can sell this honey for $15, $18 a jar. So again, you get a lot of honey as long as you're paying attention to the bees and being methodical about having your inspection. So, what? No, this hive it literally is perfect. This hive is literally perfect. I don't know how much honey you want us to harvest, but that whole box is ready. We are gonna do just like 2 frames, just so folks can see, but we'll have to come back and do like a full harvest. And all this is for y'all. So we're just putting the boxes back on now. We're going to transition over to one of our newer hives, do an inspection and see what's going on. Then one of our hives that recently died, we're going to show you why it died and what are some signs of some really negative pest pressure that can totally kill your hives. Yeah, I remember that. So you can see we didn't really smoke them as we were putting these back on. They're getting a little bit more agitated. You can hear the volume of the bees is kind of increasing a little bit. They're okay still. Oh, and just one quick thing. You'll see JJ has the full suit on. So it's a head to toe suit. If you really, really want to like make it 0 chance that you can get stung, these head to toe suits are really great. I'm not wearing one. I just have regular pants and boots on. So there's always a chance that like a bee could work its way up the back of my suit and sting me. It hasn't happened yet. But if you want that added protection, having the full suit is definitely the way to go, especially if you're allergic to bees. Oh, so yeah. So here's a great example. There are a couple hive beetles. Can you put it a little closer to the camera? I don't know how well y'all can see the little black beetle running around right by where JJ's finger is. Those are called hive beetles. They can become a big, big problem. If they're an easy pest to get rid of, but if you don't get rid of them, they can become a huge problem. They'll lay larvae in the beehives. And once that larva hatches, it's really, really nasty. I'll actually show you some today. It's really, really nasty. And it can cause the entire hive of bees to want to leave if the beetles take over, essentially like colonize the hives. So there's a couple hive beetles in here. I literally only see 3. That's not a big deal. The bees will kill them themselves. And we also have some natural pesticide that we can put on. And I'm using pesticide loosely. It's this wool paper that we will add into the hive that the hive beetles, as they're walking, it traps them. It traps their feet in it, and they'll eventually die in that wool paper, and it doesn't disturb the bees at all. So, yeah, seeing a couple hive beetles, but just the fact that it's just a few is really nothing to be concerned about. So I'm going to go get some more eggshells for the smoker. It looks like we need to re-up a little bit. So just give us a second. We'll reset here.
And please note, when you go into your hive and you are taking the frames out to check, to inspect your frames, make sure you put the frame back exactly how you took it out. And to more ensure that you can color your frames, like color code them or number them, anything that helps you know that wherever you pull a frame from, you put the frame exactly back in that same space. Because bees have uh, a certain way of doing things, and one small mess, like one one small difference can mess up the whole dynamic of the hive. So you want to ensure that you put the frames back, and so the frames are really close together, and you want to make sure you put them back close together.
So now we're gonna start checking on one of our newer hives. We just got what's called a nuke. Essentially, what beekeepers will do that sell bees commercially at the beginning of each year, as we won't go too much into this, but as new queens are born, they will take those frames of the new queens out and take a few of the bees from that hive with that new frame with the new queen, and they'll put it into a much smaller box and sell that. And that's how you can start your own hive. And they're called nukes. And these nukes, I mean, they run for $180, $200 a nuke. So just doing that process can also make you money. But it's also a really, really important process for us as beekeepers to be able to capture these new queens and create new hives. I mean, you could have an endless amount of hives eventually if you're really, really on it about capturing new queens, taking them out of that hive and putting them into new hives. And so what we were able to do, we got from Fields for Valor. Shout out to Peter. Fields for Valor is a veteran-owned farm down in Brandywine, Maryland, run by Peter Scott and Antoinette. And they do some amazing work for veterans, doing a veteran CSA. And also Pete is an expert beekeeper. And so we were able to get some bees from Pete this year. So just want to say shout out to Pete and Fields for Valor. So we're going to be diving into the next hive now. We got the smoker going. So again, this is one of our nukes, new hive, just one box with the brood chamber. We're not going to see any honey or anything here. What we're looking for is queen activity, that the queen is laying, that the queen is happy, and that the bees seem productive. Got stung? Oh, looks like JJ got stung. So, you know, it's not foolproof, y'all. The gloves, they're cowhide. They do a lot of protection, but you know, if you got big hands like Jay, and you know you're squeezing your fingers in there, there's a chance that stinger can poke through. So, one thing you want to do when you get stung is smoke that area, because as soon as a bee stings you in a place, it's sort of like it creates a target for the other bees, and they'll all go straight to that place and keep trying to sting you. So, yeah, sorry about that, Jay. You good? Jay got stung on the head last year during our honey harvest. So it's just, you know, it's part of the process. It happens, y'all. It really does.
Not a beekeeper.
That's right. That's right. Say it again.
If you didn't get stung as a beekeeper, you're not a beekeeper.
That's right. So again, we're in our nuke, our new hive body, new hive. This one just came here about a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago now. I don't know. My time's all off with coronavirus. But we're just checking for some queen activity. So here's the first frame we're pulling out. One good thing to note, Jay's been doing it, I haven't mentioned, but pulling from the center, that's where you're going to find the most activity. These kind of work from the middle out. And so pulling from the center is where you'll see things. Again, as y'all can see by now, that is some awesome capped brood. There's some larvae. I wish you could really see, but right here, there's literally a bee that's emerging. Yep. You can see its little head kind of poking out. Oh, it's about to come out. Birth, y'all. Life. Y'all didn't think you're going to see a birth this morning. No, it's not a birth. It's just an emergence. So anyway, this is really great to see. This is what you want to see from your new hive. is that the queen is laying, that the bee population, is rising, and that there is larva and brood and eggs happening. And yeah, on this side also, I mean, yeah, this new hive is looking awesome. I don't see very many drones. This is just all female workers, lots of larvae, lots of capped brood, and good hive activity. So what we're going to do, we're going to check a couple more, and then we're actually going to add a box on top of this one, because this hive is totally ready for to move upwards and start storing nectar and giving us some honey, hopefully. The thing, though, I want to mention about new hives, and the thing that beekeepers need to be mindful about, especially if you're trying to do it in an ecological way, is that the honey is the food that the bees are storing for themselves for the winter so that they can have something to eat. And so if you are taking too much honey or taking the honey too soon, you're kind of robbing your bees of having any sustenance over the winter months. And so it's really important for we're not going to harvest anything from this hive this year and save all the honey for the bees to eat over the winter so that next year they'll be super, super strong and ready to go. So just a word of advice, some beekeepers, again, that are real commercial capitalists, they will just harvest honey, let their bees die, and just keep buying new bees and new queens. But for what we believe in at the Ark and at BBAR Farms, is working with nature. And so we're going to let these bees keep their honey this year so they can have a lot of food over the winter. And then next year we'll be able to enjoy the honey. So again, that frame JJ just pulled out, it didn't have any brood on it or anything like that. So clearly there's a queen in here that's working her way outwards. So we'll see what this end frame is looking like. Another good sign for folks, another pro tip to know when it's time to start adding more bees to the hive, adding more hive bodies, so adding more boxes, is once the bees start reaching the sides. Like I mentioned, bees work from the inside out. And so once they start reaching the edges of the frame, you know that it's time to start putting on another frame up top.
And this frame shows honey nectar stores.
Okay, so this frame is great job, great call. So here you'll see that sort of, I hope y'all can see this, it's kind of glistening a little bit, shiny. That's actually the nectar. I don't know if I'm angling the camera correctly, but that's nectar. So it has not been capped yet. It came straight from the flower inside of the bee's nectar stomach or honey stomach. They regurgitated that nectar. It's actually a chain process. The foragers come, they regurgitate it into another bee's mouth, and then that bee regurgitates it into the actual cell. And so that's being stored now for the smaller, newer bees to come around and cap it over so it can ferment and turn into honey, actually. So you got to see it actually what some nectar looks like that's uncapped. Never, ever harvest nectar. It's not honey. It's not going to be sweet like you think. I don't even know if it's super edible even. I'm not sure if it's even edible. But there's no reason you should ever be harvesting nectar. You want to wait till that shiny nectar gets capped over, and you can clearly see when it turns into honey. And you can smell it too. Again, I wish folks could be here, but you can literally smell the honey and nectar when you're standing over here. So yeah, a little bit less activity. So they're kind of moving slowly over to the other side here.
Building there, as you can see, there's more nectar here.
You can see the shiny nectar. Sorry, my big head's in the way. Shadow. You can see the shiny nectar, I think, now really well. So clearly bees are foraging, bringing in nectar. That's a great sign. The bees then will cap that over and turn it into honey when they're ready. So the bees are clearly working here.
So right now, this is just drawn comb.
It's called drawn comb. And if you remember from the beginning when we started and I was showing you the frame that had the black foundation on it, that's eventually what JJ just showed you is eventually what you're going to see as they draw the comb out. And so if you could pull up that last frame, Jay, now you'll see one. So the bees haven't fully gotten here. It looks like there's a couple bees on it, but this is just the base foundation. This one is yellow. You'll either find yellow ones or black ones. As I mentioned, I like black better, because you can see more. You can see the larva better, and you can definitely see the eggs better. But a lot of times you'll get them with the yellow foundation. So the bees haven't worked their way over to this side. This is just a plastic foundation. There's no honey. There's no drawn comb on it yet. So they're clearly still working through this hive a little bit. But that's a good sign. And that also could be very well about where the entrance placement is. The opening to the hive is on the far left. So it makes sense that the left side of the hive has a lot more activity than the right side as they're coming in on that side, in and out, and sort of working their way across. So we weren't able to see the queen. Again, we don't really try to mess with the hives too much to find the queen because there's a risk of disturbing her, or what's called rolling the queen, which can kill her, essentially just crushing her accidentally. But we saw all those frames with drawn brood on it. Again, worker bee brood. So there's definitely a laying queen in here. And this hive is definitely about to explode. So JJ, let's actually add another box on top and just let this hive go. So JJ is going to grab another box. We've got one right here. Really, really simple process. Just line it up, orient it how you want. Another quick pro tip for folks, bees, when you're beekeeping, it's really, really great to orient your beehives to have the entrance be south facing. That's the side that gets the most amount of sun. So if you think about how the sun rises and sets, obviously east to west, things that are south facing all day long are getting some amount of sunlight as the sun's crossing over in the sky. Having them east facing is also kind of okay because they get that early morning sunlight. What you really want, the bees, the entire orientation of the bees, like when they wake up, how they fly, where they go back and forth, is all dependent on the sun. It looks like you need to shift it over this way a little bit, the front. Racked. Yeah. And so having the hive oriented so that the first thing in the morning they get sunlight, that starts your bees off early and just gets them an early jump start on the day, like all of us wish that we can have, so you can get out and go to the gym early morning like you say you are. Yeah, it's all good. So having your hive south facing is just another pro tip to get your bees out early, to just sort of give them an extra boost of production throughout the day. So we just added a second box onto this one. That hive looks great. Again, it's a new hive. We're not expecting any honey from it. We're just looking for signs of a healthy queen and a healthy hive. And that's absolutely what we saw here. So this is the last hive. We're going to just do a quick inspection. Then I'm going to show you all. Well, actually, we're going to skip this one. We can go into this one ourselves. I just want to show you all quickly, and then we're going to actually transition over to the honey harvest. Because we're at, yeah, we're hit our hour mark. So this is a hive, unfortunately, that has died and failed. There were some reasons outside of our control why that happened, but this hive did not make it. And one of the reasons, there's a few reasons why, but one of the big reasons that it didn't make it was it got infested with the hive beetles. So as much as we tried to keep the hives from having any infestation, depending on where the placement is, or depending on just like, you know, a lot of different factors, how rainy it is, how wet it is, you know, how resilient your bees are to warding off any intruders, you can definitely get infestations. And so as you see here, I mean, we just cracked this open this morning. There's absolutely zero sign of any bees. They've all left this hive. And what's left is the gross remains. This is just the old comb that's not being cleaned or maintained. So it's just starting to go bad. And then if you can see here, this is what's really nasty. I don't know how well you can see down here. Maybe you can flick some out for us. But this is hive beetle larva. And so what happened to this hive is it got infested with hive beetles, and the hive beetles were able to lay so much larva that the bees were like, screw it, we're out of here. And so this hive now is just entirely infested with hive beetles. So I'll show you another frame. There's some frames over here that are really good examples. Maybe they all fell out now. So we're going to yank some out and hopefully you can see. Yeah, and still, even with no bees in it, the propolis that they laid is such a glue. You know, you can't just pull these hives out. It's really, really hard. And Sarah, if you're watching this, I'm so sorry. These are your hives. We weren't as good of stewards as we should have been. You can see here on the edges. I don't know if can you see the camera? Is it pointing at the?
Okay. Oh yeah.
So if you can see here, y'all, that look, this nasty larva climbing out. If you can see inside, you know, that's really disgusting. That is not at all what you want to see. That's all hive beetle larvae. So the hive beetles infested this hive, laid their eggs all throughout the hive. Now the new hive beetle larva is all emerging, and it's really, really nasty. And if, let's say, this were an active hive, I mean, these bees all left, so it's not the worst thing in the world. But if this was still an active hive and you were seeing this, you would have to take, I mean, we're still going to do this, but you need to take every single frame out that you see any single larva on it and just let it cook in the sun. That direct sunlight will kill the larva within a day, especially in the summer heat. But you cannot leave these in the hive or else you risk entirely losing your hive. And so that's what looks like has happened to this hive is the hive beetles. Yeah, you can see them all over the frame here. These just nasty things crawling. That is not bee larvae, y'all. That is hive beetles. And they have totally infested this frame and this hive.
Bee larva doesn't do that.
Bee larva does not do that. It does not wiggle and work. It stays in its cell until it emerges as an actual bee. So if you're seeing this, this is a bad sign. So we just wanted to show you an example of what you don't want to see. You can also notice that the comb is really dark. It's not being cleaned and maintained. The bees naturally will clean their hives out of all debris and sort of leftover stuff. And so, yeah, this is not what you want to see. Unfortunately, this hive was really, really active last year. And then within the course of a year, it looks like it's just sort of been taken over. Some other things happen because bees are really strong and they'll fight the hive beetles pretty intensely to get them out. And so we had some other issues that, yeah, had caused the bees to totally leave. And now the hive beetles are just free to kind of take over. So anyways, y'all, that is just going through a really, really basic bee inspection. Again, you want to remember your different types of hive bodies that you're looking at, whether it's a deep or a medium. You want to make sure that you're looking for activity and signs for your queen. So ideally, you're going to see your queen, and you'll know. And I recommend folks at home to Google what a queen looks like. It's longer than a honeybee. You'll never see her out flying and foraging. So most folks have never seen one before. But she's a lot longer and fatter than the other female bees, but it's like she's a little more slender than the drones. So the drone bees, the male bees are like just like round and rotund. And the queen bee, she's like long, still kind of hefty, but not nearly as round as the male bees, but clearly longer than the worker bees. And so again, you want to make sure that you're seeing activity of a queen, whether that's brood being laid. Ideally, you want to see some eggs. We didn't get to see any eggs. If we would have went through, I'm sure we would have saw actual eggs too. But, yeah, eggs in there too. But there's no way, I think, on the camera y'all would have been able to see them. They're like,
they're like the size of a grain of rice.
Literally like the size of a grain of rice.
And literally like a little smaller than that.
Yeah. I mean, they're real minuscule.
Right.
So it would have been hard to even see that. We saw good activity. So making sure you see queen activity. Making sure you're checking for any pests. One pest that we didn't talk about that is a huge problem is mites. Varroa mites, they are not native to the United States, but have kind of taken over in the past 40, 50 years. And in one season, having a Varroa mite infestation can entirely wipe out your hive. So after we do the honey harvest each year, we add a treatment for Varroa mites. You won't get to see that today, but we'll be doing that in the next couple of weeks. That treatment, you leave it in the hive for around 6 weeks. It kills the Varroa mites, but it also makes it so that you can't eat any of the honey for the next, I think actually it's 6 weeks after the treatment that you can start eating the honey again. The treatment sort of naturally dissipates over time. And so we do it after our honey harvest. We made the mistake once of putting the varroa mite treatment in and then doing a honey harvest, and we had to just let that honey sit and wait for months and months and months till we got the okay to eat it. So another pro tip, when you're treating for mites or thinking about it, harvest your honey first. Don't be like us.
Yeah, don't be like us. And, the pest that he was talking about, varroa mites. So the process that we use, there's a number of different processes. So we use the acetic acid.
Yeah, oxalic acid. Yep.
Oxalic acid. But you can also use diatomaceous earth, because so what the varroa mites like to do is, so they come into the hive, get what they need, and then they drop out of the hive and go into the dirt. The dirt is where they procreate. So then once they reproduce, they make their way back into the hive. So with you putting down a layer of diatomaceous earth, the diatomaceous earth is like grounded up fish bones, right? Yeah, grounded up fish bones. So basically what that does is we put a layer of that on the ground around the hive, so that when the varroa mites try to reproduce into the dirt, they get cut all up by the shredded up fish bone. So they don't be they're not able to make it back into the hive. So that's another process of trying to keep down the varroa mites.
That's right. And Jessica, to your question, can you clean and reuse hives that have been infected? You can. So once we leave these hives out in the sun to kill all the larvae and any maybe remaining eggs that are left, we'll scrape all that kind of nasty comb that's been infected off to back down to the bare foundation. What we like to do is we'll then put it in a freezer or a fridge to make sure that it can kill anything else, any pathogens or bacteria or anything that might be left on it, and then you can reuse it. But I definitely say if you see an infected frame, yank that out immediately, scrape all that comb off, and put it in a freezer and let it freeze before reintroducing it back to your hive.
And that's in the fact of if you have any of the pest problems that we have stated, the varroa mite and the hive beetle, that pertains to that. But there is some pests or diseases that we're not going to get into today, but it's possible that you can get a pest or disease to your hive, whereas though you have to just burn your hive.
Yeah,
but that's a whole nother section of beekeeping, but I'm just letting you know.
Yeah, that's the more advanced class. But yeah, there are definitely pathogens and viruses like that are unseen by the eye that can totally wipe out a hive. And yeah, you'd want to burn literally all the boxes, because even freezing those bacteria will just stop their cellular activity, but they'll still be alive. And yeah, you just have to get rid of those totally. We haven't had that issue yet, nope. Thankfully. Because we try to be pretty on it with checking the hives and making sure things are okay and keeping the hives clean and keeping the area around the hives clean. But yeah, there's some more serious viruses that can infect hives that maybe we'll have a beekeeping 102 course sometime, and we'll go into some of the more advanced stuff. Yeah, cool. All right, so we are going to get ready for the honey harvest now. So Jay, let's just pull out 3 frames from the original hive that we looked at, 3 honey frames, and we'll show everybody the process of spinning the honey. Well, actually scraping off the honeycomb, spinning the honey, and having an actual honey extraction. So this is pretty exciting. No, I think we're going to go inside.
something to. Huh? Yeah. Where? Someone might come in there. Huh? Yeah. We have a visitor from the neighborhood. Yeah. He looks intrigued. Finger brown. I need something to put this in.
No, you can leave the book bag. I wish y'all could feel how heavy this is. Oh, full of beautiful, beautiful honey. So JJ is just picking up 3 frames. We're not going to do a full harvest of this box, even though this entire box is ready. We'll do that because it takes a little while, so we'll do that ourselves. But we're going to harvest 3 frames for you all today, show the spinning and do the extraction. Samaria is getting us set up inside to get everything ready. So this is exciting, y'all. Wow, another full frame. JJ ever so delicately. And you can hear the bees. It's kind of loud, but again, if they were really angry, it would be 5 times louder than this. I'm out here tripping.
Dom was feeling a little comfortable and had his jacket open. We had to make sure.
That's a yeah. So yeah, getting a little too excited. I had my vest, my hood, my veil wasn't zipped all the way up. That's a perfect way to get stung in the face. I've been stung a lot of places, not yet the face. So knock on wood, that doesn't happen this year. Oh, also, it's just safety. It's really, really important. We always have an EpiPen on standby. JJ and I, thankfully, are not allergic to bees, but as you all know, bee allergies are pretty common, and so it's a worthwhile investment to, as you're buying bee equipment and getting bees, to just like go ahead and buy yourself an EpiPen. They used to be inexpensive, but thanks to I won't get all political, but they're not inexpensive anymore. So unfortunately, that's another cost. But I think it's another really important thing to consider.
I think I'm gonna leave this one.
Leave that one.
No, that's all right. You can- All right. So we remove the frames. Now we're ready for the extraction. This is one of the fun parts. This is the fun part of beekeeping. Please note when you are going to harvest the honey, please note that you're taking frames away from the hive, which is going to make the bees a little agitated. So once we extract the honey, we're going to bring the frames back and put them back in the hive. But please do that very cautiously, because I did it before, not so cautiously, and I thought it was going to just be easy as me just putting the frames back in. So I went in without any like protection and got stung in the head because the bees were agitated. So once I opened the top of the hive, they like flowed out like a wave. And to prevent you guys from going through that, I want you to take notes.
Cool. All right. So now we're going to transition inside for the honey harvest. So you can't really do a harvest outside. I mean, you can, but you just have to get far away from the hives because literally bees can smell honey from like up to a mile away. You might want to bring that one. No, this one and that, yeah. And so trying to do the harvest outside, the bees will just swarm around the honey and you'll have a whole issue. So we always do our honey harvest inside. I take my veil off. Wow. Try to. Ugh. So I just want to really quickly, as we're walking inside, just show off Allen Chapel Food Pantry. They have this incredible garden out here. We grow all types of vegetables, herbs. They're going to be starting an herbal CSA. Miss Velma is the executive director of the food pantry, also a master gardener and soon to be master beekeeper. Sorry, I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, Miss Velma. But yeah, this is just like an incredibly lush, one of our Bridge Park plots. Just a really, really awesome garden space over here. All the produce that's grown here goes to the Allen Chapel Food Pantry. They do some amazing work. And if anybody would like to donate to the food pantry, I can get you in contact with Miss Velma. But they do some really incredible work over here. Okay, so we're moving on inside now. Sorry for the shaky cam. All right, Jay. All right. Whew. Okay, now for the fun part, y'all. So as I had mentioned, we have our extractor, and inside we'll throw in the frames and spin them. So JJ is going to show you the process here. Mr. Mary, if you want to jump in too and help, I'll hold that. Well, I guess we can set up the cam back. No, you don't need it now.
No, this is the first time.
So the first process that, oh, go ahead. Okay, we're back on. Okay.
All right, so this is uncapper. So as you can see, the honey is capped. So like nothing, the honey can't come out. So we're going to take the decapper and basically scrape off that layer that's holding the honey in it. It's as simple as you just want to skim the top. As you can see, I'm getting like a little bit too much honey in there, which is not a problem, but you just want to skim the top because you don't want to destroy the comb. You don't want to break the comb up and give your bees some more work to do. They already put a lot of work trying to make the comb. Some bees actually, like some other honeybees actually die in the process of making comb because it's so much. It's so, and that layer, that that we are scraping off, you can actually you can use that too for any other like value added product you wanna do on the side, like butters or uh, beeswax and
Yummy beeswax.
do it. And don't so you're gonna scrape both sides of the frame.
So I'll show you quickly. I got one all scraped. You can see yummy, yummy, yummy honey. It's gonna start dripping everywhere, so I can't hold it like this for too long. But this is what you want to see. Yeah. Yeah, that one's better. I think we learned that last year.
Yeah. And they actually you could have brought the knife.
Yeah.
No, we don't need it. They just have
So it's a slow process, but worth taking your time because the more gentle you are and the less amount of honey you kind of capture as you're going through, the more stays on the frame, and then the more honey you'll get to have once your harvest is over. So and it's a really sticky process too, so don't feel free to taste the honey as you're going. That's always allowed. I feel like the beekeepers are. That's your right as a beekeeper. You got to try your honey as you go. So, okay, so we got one frame all ready to go. Again, yummy, yummy honey here. As you can see, Mary is getting the delicious honey. Second side. Yeah, that's good. There's a little left on it. It's okay. The extractor will sort of get everything off. So you can load yours up. So hopefully y'all can see, as I mentioned, honey, delicious, awesome. You just load it into the extractor. There's slots that perfectly are made, designed exactly to fit a honey super. Hopefully y'all can see in there. That's what the inside of our honey extractor looks like. Yeah. And Samira's gonna load hers up now. So you can do up to 3 high frames at a time. There's much larger industrial ones that this one's mechanical. There's larger machine powered ones, electronic powered ones. That you can fit in like 9 frames at a time. That's for more industrial beekeeping. But for your your average backyard beekeeper, the 3-frame extractor is perfectly fine. You really don't even need an extractor. Honestly, you can do all this by hand, but this just allows that process to go much faster. But you load the 3 trays in, then you just start to spin it. Yeah, we found that having a buddy hold it is definitely the way to go.
Wait, tell me. Here's what we listening.
Yeah, it's definitely a two-person job. Team job. Okay.
You want, all right,
Put it all the way on the table.
you do it.
Yeah.
You do it.
You want me to stop?
Stop. Teamwork makes the dream work.
So what we do? How do we know?
Because I
And we usually say to spin for at least a minute of consistent spinning, just to make sure you're really getting all the honey off of there. And again, it's just like it's basic physics. The centrifuge, the honey is just being pulled out of the caps and off of the frame as it's spinning. All right. So now we'll pull one out so you can just take a quick peek at what it looks like now. It's a little hard to tell, but
So this is the side that we just extracted the honey from. As you can see, there's like no honey in there.
there's no honey in there
As
anymore.
to this side, there's still honey in there.
So you have to do you have to do both sides. Yeah, that's something I forgot to mention. You have to do both sides. So you see one side has all the honey out, so we'll flip all 3 of them around. No honey on this one. You know, you can see the open cells. It might be a little bit hard to see versus honey on that side. Forgot to bring some bread and cheese for us, y'all.
No honey. Oh, this one. Let's just take see. That's all honey.
Okay.
Last one, turn around, and you do that same process again. No honey on that side.
No, it's honey on this side.
Yep, honey on this side.
No honey over
No
here.
honey on that side. All the honey is now inside of the extractor. So we flip each one around and back to that same process. That would have been tragic.
What told me to look like
Okay, hold that up, and I think if we put this on this, because this is, it won't bang. Move this much.
Yeah, maybe a couple more spins.
Yeah.
It just screws on and off. It didn't break, y'all. I just need to tighten it down. Okay, cool. All right. So if you want to yank those frames out now so folks can see.
Why you like?
It's all the same. I guess it's all the
So
same.
honey is out now. Empty frames.
Empty frames. Now all we have to do is just put these back in the her. I mean, you can see we didn't.
Didn't get all of it. There's
We didn't
some
get
along
all
the
that.
side here. That's okay. We can leave that for the bees.
Yep.
Like I mentioned before, you never want to take too much honey because this is essentially their food for the winter time. So we've extracted all three. Now, Jay, if you want to.
Now, really fun part.
Okay.
What?
A lot in there.
Yeah, that's a nice amount in there. Can you put that in there?
Y'all can see down in there. I don't know, it's kind of hard to see, but
No, they
at
can
the
see
bottom is golden honey.
That's golden honey.
And yes, Leslie, there are electronic extractors. The bigger guys, they'll use these like 9 or 12 frame extractors that do it all yourself. And then the beeswax or fauna that we pull off, usually we have just been saving that. Like we have a huge ball of beeswax, but folks, I mean, that's the stuff that you can sell or use. So anyway, here. Now you see the final result. If you tip it a little bit, oh wow.
Can you hold it, somebody?
So this is what it's all about, folks. I mean, the pollination and stuff too. Okay, let's. So this is our first live stream, if you haven't noticed.
No, it's pretty good though. I was watching it from my phone. Everything's good.
Can you hold this?
And Miss Velma, can you grab one more of those jars? Yeah. Thank you. Honey.
And that honey. Honey.
I think so. I think so. So as you can see, all this was just 3 frames. These are 12-ounce jars. So this is larger than something you'd get in the grocery store for sure. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. These are 16-ounce jars. So much larger than you get in the store. We harvested 3 simple frames only. And as you can see, the honey is still flowing. So this hive has been awesome. This hive was super, super productive. And this is the second honey harvest here at Allen Chapel. They had 17 pounds earlier this year. So we're getting a lot of honey from, and this is just from one hive here. While we checked all the other hives, this one's the one that's really, really productive and ready. And again, this is just 3 frames. So wow. And so as you can see in the jars, there's still the floating beeswax and things. Some people like the raw unfiltered honey. It's actually super healthy. But if you want, if beekeepers want, there's strainers that you then can put the honey through a strainer and get. Is there more? We have one more. One more jar, y'all. We didn't even bring enough jars. I know, out of three frames. Yeah.
That's 64. That's a pound each one of them.
So each one of these jars is a pound. So to your initial question, I'm trying to find your question. Kevin, to your initial question, 3 frames, it looks like can do over 4 pounds of honey. And as you each, and I think I failed to mention this, but each hive body has 10 frames in it. So there's still 7 frames worth of honey in there. So this is far less than half of what you'd be getting. Oh, It's coming to the end here. This one's about half full, so it looks like 4.5 pounds of honey that we were able to get today from just 3 frames. So yeah, if we would have done all 10, we're looking at a lot of honey today. And that's just one box too. As you can remember, the box below the one we actually extracted from, those had some full capped honey frames also. So it looks like we could have gotten 2 boxes worth of honey frames. This is a really great harvest. Slowly dripping. So yeah.
It's more in there. Yeah, tilt it more.
There's still quite a bit in there. Okay. I'm going to sign off then. I'll close out. So I hope you all enjoyed today's webcast. We got some really, really awesome harvest today. I know it was a really, really rough and dirty walkthrough of honeybee hives and how all of that works. But, really happy that we were able to share this with you guys. Yeah, there's still more in the extractor, so we'll take some time and kind of scoop stuff out by hand. Somebody want to grab one? So from the farm team to everybody, thank you guys so much for joining us. No, okay. Thank you all so much for joining us. Looking forward to having this honey at our markets here really soon. And, as things kind of open up, we have Friday volunteer hours from 9 to 11 a.m. every single Friday with JJ on the Ark Farm. If any of you are curious about actually getting your hands in the hives and doing some of this beekeeping and gardening hands-on, we absolutely invite anybody to come out and join us. We're really passionate about spreading beekeeping in Ward 7 and Ward 8 east of the river, getting more Black beekeepers, and having more honey production. This is like liquid gold, honestly. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Shout out to the Bridge Park team for helping us facilitate this StreamYard. Shout out Jessica for setting everything up for us. Fields for Valor for getting us these bees. Sarah Dachos and Tony Burnham from the DC Beekeepers Alliance. Thank you guys so much for teaching us the ropes about beekeeping. Shout out to Kate Lee for introducing me and JJ to bees. So thank you guys all so much. I hope you have a great rest of your Saturday. And be happy.
Be happy.
Be happy.